show you how to make stuffed tomatoes, and these are just going to be baked in the oven. What we're going to do is we're going to take a tomato, just like this, and we're going to hollow it out like so, and then we're going to add a stuffing that we're going to make just from a grain and some other ingredients, and then we're just going to bake them in the oven. So this is a really great side dish, just for an easy vegetable-oriented side dish. It's really good if you're trying to cut back on your carbs and you don't want to have a high carb intake, because we're just going to put a little bit of a grain inside of there. And it's really good for entertaining. It's just a really great recipe. It's very easily customizable, so anything that you want. Before we get started, basically my filling is going to be bulgur wheat, and I'm using that just because it's one of my favorite grains, but you can use any grain that you want. You can use brown rice, quinoa, barley, millet, even like couscous, just anything that's a small grain. Let me first show you how to hollow out one of these tomatoes. So I just have regular tomatoes like this. Now for this recipe I am making 4 tomatoes, and that's going to be enough for 2 portions. So for dinner tonight we're having grilled chicken legs and grilled sweet potatoes, and then we're each going to have 2 of these tomatoes. These are kind of small, they're kind of fat but still short, so we're not going to be able to get that much of a filling inside of them. If you're using a larger tomato, you probably only want to go 1 per person. So let me show you how to do this. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your tomato and your knife, and you're just going to cut the thin edge of the top off. So we have top and we have tomato. Discard the top, and then you're going to take your knife, and I'm using just a smaller Japanese Santononi, I can never say that. But anyways, it's the one with the ripples on the side. Just any small knife, even a paring knife would work. And you want to put the knife into the tomato on top and just go around the top of the tomato. So basically, if you can see that, we've got the middle of the tomatoes all separated. So then we're just going to take a spoon, and we're going to dig that spoon into the tomato and pull out this middle part. So we've got the middle pulp right here, and then we've got all of our seeds and our juice. I'm just putting all of this into a spare bowl on the side. We are going to use that pulp section that I just pulled out. We're going to chop that and add it to our filling, and some of this liquid we'll use. These are very, very juicy tomatoes, so I'm not going to use all of the liquid. I'm just going to chop this pulp into smaller bite-sized pieces so it can go in with our grain. So last tomato, top is gone. Take your knife, put your knife in, just work your way around the inside of the tomato. I've heard of people doing this with a melon baller. I don't personally have a melon baller, and I find that a spoon and a knife works just as well, but if that's what you have, then feel free to use that. You just want to get the inside of this tomato as hollow as possible, because we're going to obviously stuff it, so we want to have as much room as we can to fit our filling inside. Okay, so that tomato is empty. Then just let me chop this. Okay, so I cooked the bulgur beforehand, and I cooked it in my rice cooker, because frankly I'm too lazy to cook it on the stove. So I actually cooked half a cup of bulgur. For this recipe, for 2 portions, you really only need 1/4 cup dry. A typical serving of a grain is 1/4 cup dry. So I didn't think my rice cooker could actually just cook 1/4 cup. I thought it was going to burn, so I cooked half a cup, and then I'll just use the other serving for something else. And when I cooked it, I just put it into my rice cooker. I put a bay leaf in there. I put a splash of extra virgin olive oil so that it doesn't stick to the sides. And then I added, for half a cup of bulgur, I added a cup of chicken broth. Then I just turned the rice cooker on, and within like 10 or 15 minutes it was done. And I pulled out the bay leaf, and I put a serving of that into this bowl. So we've got 1 serving of cooked bulgur right here. So to this, we are going to add a tablespoon of flax meal. Now this is totally optional. If you don't have flax meal or you're not interested in procuring any, don't worry about it. I'm adding it because it adds a little bit of extra nutrition, and because I have it in my fridge already ground up for me. If you do add this, it will just add a little bit of fiber, a little bit of protein, and a little bit of healthy fats. And it'll make it just a little bit nutty tasting. So like I said, totally optional. You won't miss it. Sorry if you don't add it. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of ground Parmesan cheese. I really want to try this with nutritional yeast, but I just haven't had a chance yet. So if you don't eat cheese or you're lactose intolerant or whatever reason, feel free to try our nutritional yeast and see if it works. I'm sure that it probably will taste good, and like I said, I'm going to do it one of these days. Now we're going to add our seasonings in. So basically I'm going to add onions and garlic, but I'm going to use dried granulated onions and dried granulated garlic. You can use fresh, but you have to cook it first. So I don't have that kind of patience or that time, honestly. So I'm just going to use dried, and it works perfectly fine. I put heavy on my seasonings because I really like seasoning. So I'm going to go with a tablespoon of dried chopped onions. And I'm going to go with a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. Oh, I'm sorry. Half tablespoon of Italian seasoning, half tablespoon of garlic. I can get this lid off. So, tablespoon of onions, half tablespoon of garlic, unless you really like garlic. But since I kind of already have my flax mill in there, I'm just going to go with half tablespoon today. And half tablespoon of Italian seasoning. Throw a little pinch in there. And then I'm just going to put some fresh ground pepper. I'm not going to measure it, just a little bit. I'm not putting salt. If you want to add salt, feel free. I put a little bit of salt when I made my bulgur. I've got salt in the cheese, and I have salt in my topping, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that. So I'm just going to give this a quick stir. And this is very, very dry, and that is why we reserve the tomato juice on the side. So get this all mixed together. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spoon, actually, let me just get this out of the way, and I'm going to pull out all of these chunks. So there is going to be a little bit of juice with these chunks, and that's okay because I do want some juice. But if I were to pour this entire bowl in here at this point, it would be all liquid. And it would not be able to sit up on a spoon to be filled into the tomatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that. But I'm just going to add these chunks. And this was just the interior of the tomatoes that I showed you guys that I pulled out and that I chopped up. Then I'm just going to give this a quick stir. Now, depending on the size of your tomatoes, depending on the other ingredients that you add, you might have a little bit of filling left over, and don't be alarmed if you do. It's totally fine. We're really just doing an estimate here because we don't know how much exactly these tomatoes will be able to hold. Okay, so now we've got our filling. Let me show you guys this. And it is a little bit moist, which is fine. But you see, it does sit up well, so it's going to be able to be filled in our tomatoes. So I'm going to take that same spoon, and I'm going to take one of my tomatoes, and what I want to do is I just want to stuff this in here. And I'm going to kind of pack it down with my spoon a little bit because there's so many little nooks and crannies inside these tomatoes from, hollowing it out and not getting all of the inside membrane out that you're going to have, a little bit of space where you need to tuck it in. And you can even put a little bit more on top too and just shove it down. So here's one tomato. So now what I'm going to do, I'll make these later, but I have a topping that I made. And this topping, again, for 4 tomatoes, I put 2 tablespoons of whipped butter. So if you're using regular butter, use less. Whipped has a lot more air in it, so there's not as much in a tablespoon as regular butter. 2 tablespoons of that, and I just melted it in the microwave. And then I added 2 tablespoons of plain breadcrumbs and a half a tablespoon of parsley flakes. And so I mixed that all together so we have a nice little bread topping. And we're just going to put this on top of the tomato and just pack it down. This also is totally optional. If you are not a fan of this or you are gluten intolerant, don't add it. I just think that it's a little bit better. And also when I eat these, I just cut the tomato in 4 and just kind of let everything move together so the breadcrumbs get involved in that, and it's really good. So tomato is done. So now I'm going to put it in my pan, but I don't want the tomato to tip over because if it tips over while it's cooking, then obviously everything's going to fall out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it in foil. So I have this little strip of foil. I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to fold it in half again. Then I'm just going to put it around the tomato and wrap it and just tighten it. And so that way it won't fall over while it's baking. And then just put it into my pan. And let me do one more while I have you guys on here. So to bake these, depending on how big your tomato is and how done you want your tomato to be, that's gonna vary. Basically, it's gonna vary your oven temperature. Sorry, I don't know what I'm trying to say. So if you want a firmer tomato that is going to be, you know, a little bit harder, a little bit of work for your knife to get into, then you want to put your oven on 350. And you're going to check it at probably about 20 minutes. What you're looking for is to see how done the tomato is and to see if the topping and the stuffing are warm. Because like I said, all of this is already pre-cooked, you're just warming it and you're cooking the outside of the tomato. So try it at 20 minutes. It could go all the way up to 30 depending on your oven, how big the tomato is, how well you want it done. If you want a softer tomato that is more wrinkled, kind of more gooey, more cooked, then put it on 375 and check that after about 15 minutes. So that, if you do 375, check it at 15, probably 15 to 20 minutes, even up to 25 depending on how done you really want it to be. And that's gonna cook your tomato. So just let me know what you guys try, because like I said, I'm always looking for new recipes. And please let me know if you have any questions. I am going to put the recipe on the blog with step-by-step instructions, but this is kind of just to show you that it's really not that daunting because the steps look a little bit difficult. So happy eating. I hope you guys like it. Talk to you later.